My dear friends, I want to speak to you today about a profound spiritual truth that may surprise you. You are being watched. You are being monitored. Every moment of your life, every thought in your heart, every word from your lips, every action you take, all of it is under divine observation. But before you feel alarmed, let me assure you that this monitoring comes from a place of perfect love, not condemnation. The psalmist David understood this reality when he wrote in Psalm 139 verse 1-4. You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. In our modern world, we've become concerned about surveillance cameras, internet tracking, and privacy invasion. But there's a divine monitoring system that has been in place since the beginning of time. Not to condemn us, but to guide us, protect us, and demonstrate God's intimate care for our lives. Today, I want to share with you 5 signs that reveal you are under God's loving surveillance. 5 evidences that the Creator of the universe is personally invested in the details of your life. First sign, your conscience bears witness. The first sign that you are being monitored by God is the activity of your conscience. That inner voice that speaks to you about right and wrong. That conviction you feel when you're about to make a poor choice. That sense of approval when you do what's right. These are evidences of God's moral monitoring system at work in your heart. Romans 2 verse 15 tells us that God's law is written on their hearts, their consciences also bearing witness, and their thoughts sometimes accusing them, and at other times even defending them. Your conscience is like a divine monitoring device that God has installed in every human heart. I've counseled thousands of people throughout my ministry, and I've never met anyone who didn't have some awareness of this inner moral compass. Even those who claim to be atheists find themselves wrestling with guilt when they do wrong, and experiencing satisfaction when they do right. This is God's monitoring system at work, constantly evaluating our choices against His perfect standard. Sometimes people try to silence their conscience through repeated sin, alcohol, drugs, or entertainment. They attempt to drown out that inner voice, because its monitoring makes them uncomfortable. But the very fact that they must work so hard to silence it proves that it's there, constantly bearing witness to God's presence and standards. When your conscience troubles you about a decision you're considering, recognize it as evidence that God is monitoring your heart and speaking to you. When you feel convicted about a relationship, a business practice, or a lifestyle choice, don't dismiss it as mere emotion. It's the Almighty Himself taking note of your life and caring enough to guide you away from harm. This divine monitoring through conscience is not meant to make you paranoid or fearful. It's meant to be a loving guide that keeps you on the path that leads to life, joy, and peace. When you learn to listen to your conscience and respond obediently to its promptings, you discover that God's monitoring is actually His mercy in action. Second sign, your prayers are answered. The second sign that you are being monitored is that your prayers receive responses. Prayer is communication with God, and communication requires someone to be listening. When your prayers are answered, whether with yes, no, or wait, it's evidence that God is actively monitoring your requests and responding according to His perfect will. 1 John 5 verse 14-15 gives us this confidence. This is the confidence we have in approaching God, that if we ask anything according to His will, He hears us. And if we know that He hears us, whatever we ask, we know that we have what we asked Him. Throughout my decades of ministry, I have witnessed countless examples of answered prayer that can only be explained by a God who is intimately monitoring the needs, desires, and circumstances of His people. Families pray for wayward children and see them return to faith. Churches pray for financial needs and receive unexpected provision. Individuals pray for guidance and find doors opening in remarkable ways. But answered prayer isn't just about getting what we ask for. Sometimes the answer is no, and that too is evidence of divine monitoring. God sees the full picture of our lives, past, present, and future. And sometimes what we think we need would actually harm us. His monitoring system is so complete that He knows not only what we ask for, but what we truly need for our ultimate good. Even unanswered prayers, or prayers that seem to be answered differently than we expected, are signs of God's active involvement in our lives. When Hannah prayed for a child, God not only gave her Samuel, but also used that child to change the course of Israel's history. Her prayer was monitored, answered, and used for purposes greater than she could have imagined. When you pray and sense that God is hearing you, when you see patterns of divine response in your life, when you experience the peace that comes from knowing your requests have been received in heaven, these are all evidences that you are under the loving surveillance of your Heavenly Father. Third sign, circumstances align for your good. The third sign of divine monitoring is when circumstances in your life align in ways that work together for your ultimate good, even when individual events might seem negative or confusing. This is evidence that God is orchestrating events with perfect knowledge of how they fit into His larger plan for your life. Romans 8:28 promises us, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." This isn't mere wishful thinking. It's a declaration that God's monitoring system extends to every detail of our circumstances, weaving them together for our benefit. I've seen this divine orchestration countless times. A man loses his job and thinks it's a disaster, only to discover that the job loss positioned him to meet his future wife. A family faces financial difficulties that force them to move, and the move puts them in the path of a ministry opportunity that transforms their lives. A health crisis that seems devastating becomes the wake-up call that leads to spiritual renewal and deeper relationships. This doesn't mean that everything that happens to us is pleasant, or that God causes evil to occur. But it does mean that God's monitoring system is so comprehensive that He can take even the worst circumstances and integrate them into a plan that ultimately benefits us and glorifies Him. When you look back over your life and see how events that seemed random or even harmful at the time actually worked together to bring you to where you are today, you're seeing evidence of divine monitoring and orchestration. The God who knows the end from the beginning has been watching over your path and directing your steps, even when you weren't aware of His presence. Fourth sign, you experience conviction and correction. The fourth sign that you are being monitored by God is experiencing conviction when you sin and correction when you stray from His path. This isn't condemnation. It's evidence of a loving Father who cares too much about your spiritual health to let you wander away from Him without intervention. Hebrews 12:6 tells us, "The Lord disciplines the one He loves, and He chastens everyone He accepts as His son." This divine discipline is actually proof of God's love and evidence that He is actively monitoring our spiritual condition. When you find yourself unable to enjoy sinful pleasures the way you once did, when engaging in wrong behavior leaves you feeling empty and restless, when you sense God's displeasure over choices that others seem to make without consequence, these are signs that God is monitoring your heart and calling you to higher ground. Sometimes this correction comes through circumstances, consequences that naturally follow from poor choices. Sometimes it comes through the words of other believers who speak truth into your life. Sometimes it comes directly through God's Spirit speaking to your heart during prayer or Bible reading. The key is recognizing that this conviction and correction are evidences of God's love, not His anger. He monitors your life because He has invested His love in you, and He refuses to let you settle for less than His best. When you feel God's corrective hand in your life, respond with gratitude rather than resentment, knowing that it's proof you are precious to Him. Fifth sign, unexpected protection and provision. The fifth and final sign that you're being monitored is experiencing unexpected protection from danger and provision for your needs. When God is watching over your life, He often intervenes in ways that demonstrate His awareness of your circumstances and His power to help you. Psalm 121:3-4 assures us, "He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, He who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep." This is the promise of a God who never stops monitoring the lives of His people. Throughout my ministry, I have heard countless testimonies of divine protection. Near-miss accidents, healings that defied medical explanation, provision that came at exactly the right time, dangers that were avoided through what seemed like coincidence, but was actually divine intervention. Sometimes this protection is dramatic and obvious. Other times it's subtle. A delay that keeps you from harm. A change of plans that positions you for blessing. A stranger who appears with exactly what you need at precisely the right moment. But whether obvious or subtle, these interventions are evidence that God is actively monitoring your life and intervening on your behalf. This doesn't mean that believers are exempt from all difficulty or danger. God's monitoring and protection operate according to His perfect will and timing, which sometimes includes allowing us to face challenges that strengthen our faith and character. But it does mean that nothing happens in your life without God's knowledge and consideration. My friends, you are being monitored, but not by a suspicious government or a corporate entity seeking to profit from your information. You are being watched by the God who created you, redeemed you, and loves you with an everlasting love. His monitoring is not an invasion of your privacy. It's an expression of His care. This divine surveillance should not make you paranoid or fearful. Instead, it should fill you with confidence and peace. The God who monitors your life is the same God who gave His Son to die for you. He is not watching to condemn you, but to guide you, protect you, and bless you according to His perfect plan. As you go forth from this place today, live with the awareness that you are never alone, never forgotten, never beyond the reach of God's loving care. Let the knowledge of His monitoring motivate you to live worthy of His attention, to make choices that honor His name, and to trust in His perfect oversight of your life. Remember, if God is monitoring your life closely enough to number the hairs on your head, as Jesus told us He does, then surely He can be trusted with every detail of your circumstances. Live in the confidence of His love. Walk in the light of His guidance. And rest in the assurance that the One who watches over you never slumbers nor sleeps.